Welcome to the 30th anniversary celebration for DIMACS. Today we celebrate the past, but we really look to the future. We have a lot of people to thank, but I only have 30 minutes for the opening, so I'm going to say a few things at the end. But I wanted to start right away by introducing the Chancellor from New Brunswick, Chris Malloy. And without the support of Rutgers, an institution like this, with its home turf supporting it the way Rutgers has over these past 30 years, we would not have succeeded. So, Chris, thank you very much.
Professor Roberts, thank you very much, actually. I've done very little. I just understand that you joined Rutgers back when I was an undergraduate student here. So it's been a long ride. It's been a long and highly successful ride for you and for DIMACS. Good morning, everyone, and I want to thank you all for having me join you today. This is not my field. I'm a cancer researcher and a pharmaceutical scientist by training, and now have this small administrative role. I'd like to welcome the members of NSF who are here representing NSF, the representatives of the many DIMACS partners from many universities as well, the private sector, the federal, state, and local government, and this will be a really interesting couple of days to discuss the anniversary of DIMACS and the tremendous progress that the group has made. DIMACS aligns with Rutgers' mission to provide research and education programs that contribute to making the world a better place in many ways, as you all know. It was founded in 1989 as part of the inaugural class of 11 NSF and Foundation and Technology Centers covering all areas of science and engineering. And at the time, it was the largest award that Rutgers had ever received. Thank you again, Fred. Since its inception, DIMACS has had more than 40,000 students utilize its educational modules. More than 700 undergrads from around the world have participated in undergraduate research programs. 150 postdoctoral researchers have spent time at the center, and more than 30,000 people have participated in the workshops in which DIMACS is justly renowned. The center has brought Nobel Prize winners, officials from the Coast Guard and the TSA, security directors of teams in the NFL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball to the Rutgers campus. And it has invited high school students to demonstrate their research and faculty from 2- and 4-year colleges to learn about new research topics relevant to their classrooms. The center's research has led to the solution of open problems in a wide variety of fields ranging from discrete and computational geometry to graph theory and bioinformatics. It's contributed to the development of new fields such as computer-aided verification, prediction markets, statistical physics, and catalyzed research in genomics, sustainable human environments, homeland security, and economic epidemiology. DIMACS has also pioneered K-12 programs in biomathematics, computational thinking, and sustainability, and its novel international programs in undergrad research and capacity building have benefited Africa as well. These are only some of the highlights that many of you already know, and they only skim the surface of DIMACS accomplishments. We at Rutgers are extremely proud of Fred and DIMACS, congratulate Dr. Roberts and all of you for the program, and hope you have a great conference. Thank you very much, and thank you.
So thank you, Chancellor Malloy. We, as the Chancellor just said, started out as a NSF Science and Technology Center. And one of the things we're doing here today is celebrating not just 30 years of DIMACS, but 30 years of the NSF STC program. So we were proud to be in the first class of 11 STCs. That program is thriving, and we've found amazing partnerships with folks in many other disciplines as a result of the STC program. So while we emphasize DIMACS here, let's remember that this is a much bigger enterprise than DIMACS. And so we owe this NSF a lot of things, not just for DIMACS, but to be part of such a major activity. So that being said, I'm going to read an email I got last night from Erwin Giancondani, who is the acting director of the Computer and Information Systems and Engineering Directorate at NSF, so he's the assistant director of NSF. He says, first, let me apologize for not being able to attend today's 30th anniversary event in person. As Fred, Rebecca, and others know well, and that's Rebecca, right, our just prior director. I've been a huge fan of DIMACS and all of you who've made this center such a success over the last 30 years. I wish I could be there in person to celebrate with you, but alas, we're still awaiting passage of appropriations for NSF beyond today, and so I've had to stay back. He tells me in his email there's a lot more to that story, and he wouldn't want to put it in writing, so I'm glad that Rance Cleveland can be here to commemorate this occasion on behalf of NSF, and I know he'll say a bit more for all of us in just a moment. But I'd like to take a moment to express on behalf of Rance and all of my colleagues at NSF just how pleased we all are to be able to congratulate DIMACS on 30 years of intellectual leadership in research and education, in mathematical, computational, and statistical methods, algorithms, modeling, analysis, and applications. As many of you know, DIMACS was established as part of, you're going to get tired of hearing this, of the inaugural class of NSF Science and Technology Centers in 1989, one of two computationally focused centers in that class. In the 3 decades since, the work of the extraordinary team of scholars at DIMACS, and that means all of you, has advanced the field of theoretical computer science and resulted in the education of thousands of students who today form the next generation of talent critical to our nation's continued competitiveness in this area. You have much to celebrate and be proud of today. Your technical contributions, your nurturing of the community, and your societal impact, and thanks in large measure to how you have shaped the field over all these years, you have much to consider as well about the research and education challenges and opportunities we'll face in the years ahead. So I wish you a wonderful event marking this occasion. Congratulations again, and here's to another 3 decades. And with that, I'll introduce Rance Cleveland from NSF.
Thanks, Fred. So it's a pleasure to be here to help celebrate the many and varied achievements of DIMACS over what is alarming to me to realize are 3 decades. Not alarming because I didn't think we would be here 30 years after the fact, but alarming in the fact that I'm 30 years older than my first experience with DIMACS, but I'll tell you more about that later. So I'm the division director within NSF, within SICE in particular, the Computer and Information Science and Engineering Directorate. And I've been in that role for a little over a year. And so I direct the Computing and Communication Foundations Division. And as such, just to show you where I sit, I report to Erwin, whose comments you just heard. And I'm the director of what's often called the Theory Division or the Foundations Division, which has had sort of deep and ongoing interactions with the DIMACS community since DIMACS founding 30 years ago. So the topics that are covered in my division include algorithmic foundations, complexity theory, communications and information theory, software and hardware foundations, and as well as emerging topics such as quantum computing and neuromorphic computing and biocomputing. And so as you can see, there are a lot of touch points in the CCF division between with interests of DIMACS And it's been a great pleasure over the years to have deep and ongoing interactions with your community. So I wanted to supplement Erwin's remarks about the intellectual and educational and cultural impact, quite frankly, of DIMACS with a couple of observations on my part about the impact that the DIMACS model has had on computing research. So I'm old enough to remember in the late 80s, and they extended before and after these arguments that people used to have between the merit of large-scale research in computing. There was a lot of sentiment back in the day that computing research should focus on small teams, grants given to 1, 2, and 3 PI teams to support specific technical advances in discrete research problems. And that's a useful enterprise. That's sort of, in some sense, the grassroots of scientific endeavor, and that sort of activity should always be supported. However, where DIMACS, in my view, was revolutionary was in pointing out that in addition to the specific technical advances made by individual PIs, there's a lot of value in having larger efforts that, in addition to supporting research in discrete problems, can also take strategic views, have influence on policy making, and also as well as outreach and educational activities that can spur the advance of a discipline beyond the works of the individual PIs. And as I said, when DIMACS started, this was not I would say, well-accepted view, and DIMACS has been instrumental in my reading in helping to enhance individual PI research with center-based activities that can take a larger view on the development of the field and also a community. The other thing that's intriguing to me is I look at this, and this is reflected, I think, in the both in the research projects that are being funded in my division at NSF, but also in the agenda today, is that theoretical computer science has been able to branch out beyond the theoretical computer science research community. So there's, and this is in large part to DIMACS's emphasis not just on pure theoretical computer science research, which is extremely important, of course, but also on implications that the research performed by theoretical computer scientists can have on other fields, from biology to statistics to physics and to engineering and beyond. The other thing, and this is also quite, this is a testament to the DIMACS leadership as well as the vision of Rutgers and other partners. DIMACS also shows that when the initial money runs out, you can still maintain a thriving research institute. So I guess probably the last STC check was written 20 years ago, yet here we are 20 years later with outreach, research, educational activities going full throttle. And this is really I have to tip my hat to the DIMACS leadership team, as well as their benefactors and their institutions for enabling this to happen. So congratulations on that. However, I also, wanted to close my remarks by sharing a little bit of a personal remembrance. So that was me roughly 30 years ago. And in 1989, in fact, the same year that DIMACS started, I started my academic career as an assistant professor at North Carolina State. And I'm a formal methods researcher in terms of my own personal background. And I noticed that there was a very interesting workshop being held, Computer-Aided Verification 90. So that logo you see is actually a later instantiation of the CAV logo. But well, this sounded like something interesting, somebody that sort of an aspiring young formal methods person should check out. It turns out that DIMACS was a sponsor. In fact, I believe that you can see a copy of the DIMACS, the workshop proceedings that were presented printed as part of the DIMACS series. And I believe this was the third volume in the series. So in fact, I had a paper accepted, there it is, page 463, in the proceedings. So in fact, I traveled, and I realized this is the only other time I've been to Rutgers. It's my loss, of course, not to have had more opportunities to come here. And so I came here, and back then, we actually had a tour of the DIMACS offices, which were in a trailer on a parking lot on the edge of campus. I think technically it might have been in Piscataway, in fact, not in New Brunswick at the time. Although, you know, who knows the difference. So, of course, I was very excited. I came here. I remember we stayed in dorms because it was the summertime, so the dorms were open. They provided dorm rooms for the people attending the workshop. A very interesting workshop. And indeed, 30 years on, everybody's doing fine. At least I think I am. I got tenure, got all my promotions, moved to a couple of different places and wound up at the University of Maryland. CAV is now the preeminent conference in the field of formal verification. And DIMACS is here 30 years later, still having its impact on the foundations of computing. So with that, I'll thank Fred and his team for inviting me here. I want to thank all of you for helping continue this DIMACS legacy of excellence in research and education and outreach in theoretical computer science. And I wish everyone here a wonderful 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Rance. Your comment about the trailers in the parking lot reminds me of how we started and how it was one of my first lessons as a naive faculty member that space is one of the key issues around any campus. And as it turned out, we got the announcement from NSF that we were getting DIMACS. That was in December of 1988. And they said, the money is coming in February, you've got to get started. We could not find a place to house DIMACS, so luckily the university stepped in and gave us some trailers. And so we started with trailers in the parking lot, and it went, I guess, uphill from there. So let me turn next to the Executive Dean of Arts and Sciences, Peter March. DIMACS now reports to Arts and Sciences, and Peter has been a remarkable supporter of ours. He's also a mathematician, which is either good or bad. I am as well. But, Peter, thanks a lot, and come on up and say a few words.
Well, thank you, Fred, and everyone for coming here. I really will say just a few words. Been trying to choose them carefully. Perhaps one thing I can say is, echoing Rance's comments, I think DIMACS was founded in the first year I had a tenure-track job, 3 kids under the age of 6, lots of challenges, and over the course of my career, I've participated in various ways and always came back from a DIMACS event just energized, sometimes slightly frightened by finding out what everyone else is doing and I'm not, but that was a very useful spur to a young person starting out. And various things happened between that date and today. I went to administration. I think I've enjoyed that in a sort of odd way. And you know, there are many duties and responsibilities of a dean, and relatively few pleasures. But I have to say, in all honesty, being involved either as a participant or now as a officer of Rutgers University in an official way, it's been a real pleasure interacting with DIMACS, the leadership, the community it serves, the community that it networks together. And I've, let's say in my more mature years, have come to understand something about the DIMACS way of doing things, or the method, which is really remarkable. DIMACS has this fantastic high affinity for collaboration, for seeing patterns in the mathematical or statistical or computer science underpinnings of a problem, most remarkably in instances where that's not so obvious from the beginning. And it has this remarkable way of bringing people together, exciting them about a common purpose, putting teams together, executing, and then doing it again. So this is incredible dynamism, intellectual and social, professional dynamism, which is, I think, the most remarkable asset of Rutgers, except for Fred, of course, who was the leader of the gang. I think I also want to note that it's been pioneering in several other ways. For example, the the 6-letter pronounceable acronym. That's quite an accomplishment. My friends at NSF will appreciate that. Yeah. So very good. I do want to say just a couple of things. This event seems to be about celebrating the past, and it absolutely is. But it's really about looking to the future. I don't know if I'll personally be here, but I'm absolutely certain there's a 60th anniversary coming up, and it will be absolutely fabulous. You might have to wheel me in, but I want to come. I also want to take a moment, in all seriousness, to thank several people for their leadership. Fred Roberts, of course, Rebecca Wright, who's joined us from the city, and also David Pennock, who, this is how dedicated he is. He isn't even a Rutgers employee yet, and he's here in the front row. So he's the new director, and we're really, really looking forward to having you here. So with that, I want to say thank you and welcome to all the partners, participants, institutions that have contributed to DIMAC's success. And I blocked off my calendar. I'm planning to be here all day. So, and I know I won't be disappointed. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. And just a closing remark or two, and basically, thank you to everybody, especially to those of you who make DIMACS work. And we said from the very beginning, and the first director of DIMACS, Danny Gorenstein, set this as the goal for DIMACS. Nobody's going to get paid. This is all volunteer. Of course, it's not true anymore. But DIMACS only succeeds when its community, this large community, is engaged. And that then is incumbent upon us as the directors, and this is a message for you, Dave. You have to give us something, says the community, that we want to latch onto. And as we go forward now for the next 30 years, when we will wheel Peter back in, an organization like this only succeeds when it changes. And I think we've been pretty good about being nimble and moving from one topic to another. There are a lot of things we do now that I don't think existed when we started, or even 5 years ago. So one of the agenda items for this next 2 days and for the next year and so on is to plan where we go from here. So this is forward-looking, not just backward-looking. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being part of DIMACS. I will name all the people who've helped later when I get to speak again. I will also say thank you to all the partner organizations and institutions, not just Rutgers. And again, special thanks for NSF, which provided some of the funds for this activity, a nice substantial amount of money that makes it possible to have such a nice event. A couple of rules of the day. We squeezed in lots and lots of parts of this program. means we have a really tight schedule. So we've asked everybody to speak fast and to stick to their time. And we've given the speakers the option of taking questions if they end early. So if they don't end early, there won't be questions. They'll have time during networking breaks to have discussion. So have a great 2 days. Welcome everybody, and we'll get started with the scientific program.